He didn't just take a parking spot. He drove over the curb, crushed my flower bed, and parked his battered little car directly on my lawn. Then he went into the pub across the street. And when I walked in to ask who it was, he looked at me and stayed quiet. That was his mistake. If you've ever had someone disrespect your space and assume you do nothing, this story is for you. Hit subscribe if you love revenge that's clever, controlled, and painfully proportional. Like the video, and while you're at it, tell me in the comments, what would you have done? Now let's begin. I live in Oxfordshire, England. Not the dramatic postcard villages people picture. Just a modest residential street with trimmed hedges, low stone walls, and homes that carry quiet pride. Across from my house sits a pub, not some corporate monstrosity, a proper local. Dim lights, worn oak beams, sticky carpets that have known generations of spilled ale. Every Monday night they host live music, and it's popular. Not London famous, but popular enough that by 6 in the evening, parking becomes competitive. Civilized on the surface, savage underneath. Cars line every legal space, half on pavements, crooked angles, drivers doing three-point turns like vultures circling prey. Normally, I tolerate it, because that's community life. But there is one unspoken rule on our street: you respect private property. And especially you do not drive onto someone's lawn. It's easy to think, it's just grass. But it wasn't just grass, that lawn took work, time. Sunday mornings kneeling in damp soil, replanting after winter frost, adjusting edging, watering in dry spells. It wasn't perfection, but it was intentional. And there's something sacred about intentional effort, about maintaining something in a world where most people cut corners. That lawn was a small extension of dignity. And Monday nights tested it. Not physically, until now. But you always worried someone might push too far. And that night someone did. I remember the moment vividly. It was around 7:45 p.m. I stepped outside to head to the pub myself. I like live music. I'm not anti-fun. The evening air was cool. The bass from inside the pub thudded faintly through the street. And then my brain hesitated. There was a shape where there shouldn't have been one. A dull-colored car. Too close. Too wrong. I stopped walking, tilted my head. No, that can't be, and then it hit me. It was on the grass, not near it, not partly over, on it. The tires had mounted the curb. There was a visible indentation where the weight had pressed into the soil. 2 of my flower pots had been nudged aside like obstacles in a video game. He hadn't even tried to be careful. He'd simply decided the space existed for him. The first wave wasn't rage, it was disbelief. Because when someone crosses a social boundary that blatantly, your brain stalls. Surely no one would be that entitled? But then the second wave came. Heat rising from stomach to chest. A strange buzzing behind my ears, not explosive anger, something colder. A sharp awareness of being dismissed, because that's what this was. Whoever parked there had assessed the situation and concluded, this house won't do anything. That calculation is what infuriated me, not the grass, not even the damage, the assumption. I crossed the street. The noise grew louder as I opened the door. Inside, warmth, chatter, a guitarist mid-song, laughter, pint glasses clinking. I stood just inside the doorway for a moment, scanning, thinking, be calm. Then, clearly but firmly, I raised my voice between songs. Whose car is parked on my lawn? Music faded. Conversations dipped. It wasn't an aggressive tone. It didn't need to be. And that's when I saw it. One of the musicians' guitar still strapped on flicked his eyes toward the window, just for a split second. But it was enough. Guilt has a very distinct look. Microsecond tension in the jaw. A slight widening of the eyes. A decision happening internally, play it cool. He looked back at me. Blank face. No movement. No confession. The room was silent. No one spoke. Not him, not his mates. No one asked questions. They all chose neutrality. And in that silence, I understood something important. He thought I wouldn't escalate. He thought social awkwardness would protect him. He thought I'd retreat. I gave him one more chance. Whoever it is, I need it moved. Nothing. He adjusted his grip on the guitar. Someone coughed, and the moment passed. They resumed playing, as if I had simply imagined the car. When I walked back across the street, something had shifted inside me. Confrontation is one thing, being ignored is another. Ignored disrespect is insulting on a deeper level. And here's something I've learned about people like that. They bank on politeness. They rely on you caring more about social harmony than your own boundaries. So I thought carefully, what are my options? In Oxfordshire, you can't just call a tow truck for this. Police? Laughable. Shouting? Ineffective. No, this required something proportional. Visible, embarrassing, unavoidable. He had chosen spectacle by parking directly in view of an entire pub, so I decided to use the stage he'd created. Back inside my house, I opened a kitchen drawer. Pen, post-its, duct tape, and then my eyes landed on the lipstick. Bright red, cheap, long-lasting, the kind that sets like industrial paint. I picked it up slowly, turned it in my fingers, and a thought settled comfortably in my mind. You want visibility? Let's give you visibility. The night air felt cooler when I stepped back outside, not because the temperature had changed, because the decision had. The car sat there exactly as before, headlights off, engine cold, completely unbothered. Across the street, light spilled from the pub windows. Silhouettes moved past the glass. Laughter burst out when the door opened briefly. Someone was watching, I could feel it. I walked straight to the driver's side window. No hesitation. I uncapped the lipstick slowly, deliberately. There is something deeply satisfying about that small twist, the red bullet rising upward. And then, without rushing, I pressed it to the glass. The first letter dragged thick and waxy across the window. D. The lipstick glided, but resisted. Slightly. Glass isn't skin. It made a faint scratching sound. Oh, the letters were large, almost theatrical. I wanted there to be no confusion. Not then a space. I stepped back, already dramatic, but I wasn't finished. Park. The word park stretched nearly the full width of the glass. Here, do not park here. Bright red, bold, unmissable. I stepped back again. Even from across the street, it would be visible, which meant inside that pub, wherever he was standing, he just watched the first declaration land, and he still hadn't come out. This is the part people underestimate. Revenge isn't just about action, it's about timing. Every second he didn't come out, the humiliation compounded, because now he wasn't just someone who parked badly. He was someone watching the consequence unfold and choosing cowardice. I moved to the passenger window. Same message, do not park here. Slow, deliberate, no smudging, no panic scribbling. My handwriting was neat. If you're going to humiliate someone, do it properly. And as I wrote, I imagined what was happening inside. Maybe one of his mates leaned over. Is that your car? Maybe he shrugged. Yeah, but she won't, and then they'd all look again. Realization dawning, because this wasn't a light tap on the window. This was visible, permanent looking, spectacle. Musicians thrive on attention, but not this kind. Now here's where pettiness became art. The little triangular rear windows, you know the ones? Pointless, small, hardly noticeable. Those got it too, because I wanted him to scrape every inch, every panel, every reminder. By the time I finished, each glass surface displayed the same bright red instruction. It looked less like vandalism, more like a public service announcement. Then came phase 2. From my pocket, I pulled out the post-its. Simple yellow squares. On each one, I had written in thick pen, no parking, all caps, heavy strokes. I pressed one to the center of the windshield. Then I tore off a long strip of duct tape. And another, and another. I layered it excessively, over the top, across the sides, horizontally, vertically, not sloppy secure. The tape stretched tight across the glass, edges sealed down. The adhesive was aggressive, the kind that leaves residue no matter how carefully you peel it. I repeated the process on the rear windscreen, another on the driver's side, another on the passenger side. By the end, the car looked less like transportation and more like a crime scene exhibit. At one point, mid-tape application, I glanced up, just briefly. One of the pub windows reflected light off the glass, and I swear I saw movement pause. Silhouettes had shifted. I didn't wave, didn't glare. I simply continued. Because what makes revenge potent isn't rage, it's composure. If I had screamed, it becomes drama. If I stay calm, it becomes consequence. Why didn't he come out? Because that would require admission. Once he steps outside, everyone knows. By staying inside, he could pretend. Perhaps he hoped I'd stop. Perhaps he assumed I'd get tired. Maybe he thought she wouldn't actually finish. He underestimated patience. When I finally stepped back, I evaluated my work. It was obnoxious, impossible to miss, and entirely earned. I capped the lipstick, gathered the tape roll, walked back into my house, made a cup of tea, and sat quietly by the window with the lights off. Across the street, the band kept playing. Time passed. Eventually, the music slowed. People drifted out in groups. I didn't stand there staring, that would ruin it. I let imagination do the work. At some point, he would step outside, stop mid-stride, hear the laughter start, because there would be laughter. There's no universe in which there wasn't. Picture it. He reaches the car, his mates hovering nearby. "Mate, what did you do?" He peels one corner of tape, realizes how strongly it's stuck, peels harder. The tape stretches, tears, leaves glue streaks. Someone offers a half-hearted "need help?" Another takes a photo. The lipstick doesn't wipe clean with a sleeve. It smears slightly but sets deeper. Bright red streaks now across multiple windows. Cars pass on the road behind him. Drivers slow slightly. What's going on there? He eventually gives up cleaning it fully. Gets into the driver's seat. Red letters partially blocking vision. Starts the engine. And now he must drive, through town, past other pubs, past pedestrians, past traffic lights where he must sit still while strangers read, "Do not park here." Maybe someone pointed. Maybe someone laughed. Maybe someone took a picture. The humiliation didn't exist in shouting. It existed in visibility. And that's what made it surgical. When I woke the next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains softly. I didn't rush to the window immediately. I let the suspense linger. Then I walked outside. The car was gone. No note, no confrontation, no retaliation. Just two deep tire impressions cutting through the lawn, and faint glue residue still shimmering on small bits of gravel where tape had fallen. It was quiet, almost serene, like nothing had happened, except it had. That afternoon, I drove to the hardware shop, because petty revenge is satisfying, but permanent solutions are peace. I bought a sturdy wooden post. Solid, unremarkable, functional, and in the exact spot he'd driven through that narrow opening beside the hedge I dug. The soil was slightly softer where his tires had passed. It took effort to drive the post down deep enough, but once secured it stood firm, not aggressive, not ugly, just present, a visible boundary. Now, even if someone felt bold enough to try again, physics would object. It's strange how quickly a street returns to normal. By Tuesday afternoon, if you walked past my house, you'd see nothing unusual. A lawn, a hedge, a wooden post, a quiet road. But psychologically, the atmosphere had shifted, because actions leave residue, even when the tape doesn't. Neighborhoods are ecosystems. Gossip is currency. By Wednesday, I noticed something subtle. My next-door neighbor, who normally sticks to polite nods, slowed slightly while walking her dog. Her eyes flicked toward the lawn, toward the post, then toward me. A small smile, not mocking, not judgmental, understanding. Later, that week, another neighbor casually asked, "Bit of parking drama Monday night?" See, the pub crowd had talked. Someone always talks. What fascinated me wasn't that people knew. It was the tone. There was no condemnation. No, that was too much. Instead, there was satisfaction, because everyone on this street had experienced Monday night parking chaos. Everyone had felt that creeping irritation, but no one had escalated it. Until now. Now let's talk about him. The musician, I never saw him formally apologize, but I saw him again the following Monday. Band unloading equipment. Same guitar case. Same slightly theatrical posture. This time, he parked legally, 2 streets away. I watched discreetly from behind my curtain, not obsessively, just observant. He walked past my house with his instrument in hand, and when he reached the wooden post he looked at it, just for a second, then continued walking. No eye contact with my windows, no swagger, subtle humility. Lesson absorbed. I imagine he downplayed it later. Some woman went crazy with lipstick. At best, he frames it as inconvenience. At worst, he becomes the villain in his own retelling. And that's the brilliance of proportionate revenge. It forces self-awareness. Now I won't pretend the lawn fixed itself. Tire grooves lingered for weeks. I reseeded patches, watered carefully, pressed soil back into place. And each time I worked there, I felt no anger, only a faint smirk. Because that grass, it recovered. His pride probably took longer. That wooden post became more than prevention. It was visible philosophy. A boundary that said, this far, no further. And here's something interesting. No one has attempted to park there since. Not once. It turns out most people don't need punishment. They need clarity. And one person publicly corrected is enough to educate many. Silently watching. Sometimes I imagine the alternate reality. If I'd shrugged, left the car there, complained internally but stayed silent, would he do it again? Would someone else see and copy? Boundaries unprotected become invitations, and grass becomes parking. Small tolerances grow, until your space no longer feels like yours. That's how resentment builds over little things. Months later, live music Mondays continued. Crowds came, parking still tight, but never again on my lawn. Sometimes I would glance out the window during busy evenings. Cars circling, drivers frustrated, but none bold enough to mount that curb, because one bright red message had echoed loudly enough. It's not about grass, it's not about lipstick. It's about the moment someone silently calculates your tolerance level, and it's about surprising them. Now I won't pretend the lawn fixed itself. Tire grooves lingered for weeks. I reseeded patches, watered carefully, pressed soil back into place, and each time I worked there I felt no anger, only a faint smirk, because that grass, it recovered. His pride probably took longer. That wooden post became more than prevention, it was visible philosophy, a boundary that said, this far, no further. And here's something interesting. No one has attempted to park there since. Not once. It turns out most people don't need punishment. They need clarity, and one person publicly corrected is enough to educate many silently watching. Sometimes I imagine the alternate reality. If I'd shrugged, left the car there, complained internally but stayed silent, would he do it again? Would someone else see and copy? Boundaries unprotected become invitations, and grass becomes parking. Small tolerances grow, until your space no longer feels like yours. That's how resentment builds, over little things. Months later, live music Mondays continued. Crowds came, parking still tight, but never again on my lawn. Sometimes I would glance out the window during busy evenings. Cars circling, drivers frustrated, but none bold enough to mount that curb, because one bright red message had echoed loudly enough. It's not about grass, it's not about lipstick. It's about the moment someone silently calculates your tolerance level, and it's about surprising them. Not with violence, not with escalation, but with creativity, with composure, with consequence. The most powerful revenge isn't explosive. It's controlled. It leaves you sleeping well and them explaining themselves. There's something deeply satisfying about poetic balance. He chose convenience over respect. I chose visibility over silence. And in the end, nobody called the police. Nobody was harmed, no screaming matches, no legal battles, just a lesson, delivered neatly, in bright red. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever delivered revenge that was subtle but unforgettable? What would you have done in my situation? Would you have knocked again, called someone, or gone full lipstick like I did? If you enjoyed this story, hit like. Subscribe for more revenge narratives where justice isn't loud, it's clever. And share this with someone who needs a reminder. Don't mistake politeness for weakness. I'll see you in the next one.
If you like stories where people finally get what they deserve, click the playlist on screen and binge the rest.